real quick disclaimer before I start the video for today because I feel like it's really important, especially as certain videos on my channel are gaining traction, because I want to make something very clear. Number one, before you comment on my video, if you're going to comment something ignorant or something negative, especially if it's not constructive, and especially when you know you did not watch my video all the way through, don't, because I'm not going to be going back and forth with people in my comments, and I would simply just delete it, and that's just that on that. But also, this is a pro-black channel. I don't know why people don't get it. Certain people don't get it, but my channel is for the uplifting, for the spotlight, for the acknowledgement of Black folks, especially Black women and dark-skinned women, because as I said before, we are usually the ones that are left out in the cold. I am not going to stop pointing out colorism. I'm not going to stop pointing out the misrepresentation of Black people, especially Black women, because there is way more writing on us being negatively portrayed compared to white women or white men. I will explain this further in this video for today, but I need to make that inherently clear. This is also an inclusive channel. We are inclusive to everyone regardless of their gender, gender identity, sexuality, all of that. We do not do the homophobia, transphobia, all the phobias. We don't do them over here, okay? My job and my aim is to be inspirational, to be a source of entertainment, and if we learn something along the way, that's also awesome. So please, I really don't appreciate people trying to tell me as a Black woman how to feel, how I am portrayed, especially when a white man or white people are making stuff and I'm supposed to be a target audience, or they're trying to boast about diversity when clearly that is not the case. Thank you and enjoy the video. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. This is Brown Sugar Commentary, and I'm your girl, Kayla. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe for more videos. All right, let's get right into it. It feels like a cute little minute since I made a video. I don't know why. Does it feel like that, y'all? I don't know. It probably just been a week, but whatever. Here we are. Okay, hope y'all staying safe. Hope y'all doing well. So, as we reach the final week of this here Black History Month, I wanted to talk about some positive portrayals of diversity and Black women and Black folks. About 2 weeks ago, Disney Plus released the 1997 Rodgers and Hammerstein version of Cinderella, starring Brandy and Whitney Houston. And boy, did I live. Okay, me and my mother watched it on Valentine's Day, and I swear the 5-year-old in me just did cartwheels, okay? Because the way that I used to watch this tape religiously as a kid, and the fact that the movie still holds up, still is amazing, still great, and it's still great, but you know what? It makes me sad because the fact that this is a cinematic masterpiece and what was able to be accomplished in this movie has yet to really be replicated in today's time. And this movie was made almost 24 years ago. That is really unfortunate. But you know what? We're going to talk about how great it is. And you know what else we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about why representation matters. I feel like I say that phrase a million times over on this channel, but we're really going to do a deep dive and explain why it matters. Because I feel like certain people, if you know, you know, child, feel the need to comment and speak on why Black people or even other marginalized groups care so much about how we're portrayed in media, whether that's fiction or not. Because the news also is a form of media where marginalized groups are it's kind of portrayed in very polarizing and sometimes very harmful ways. But that's another conversation for another day, honey. Today, we're going to talk about Cinderella and why it is just the GOAT of diversity done right. All right, let's get right into it. So, I mean, what a time. What a time to be alive. I mean, I was only 1 year old when this movie came out. It came out on ABC November 2nd, 1997. If you see me looking over here, I'm just looking at my notes, making sure I don't ramble on for too long. But this movie was, I mean, it was a third remake of the same movie with the same title. 2 versions were done prior, one in I think around the 50s and the 60s. I believe, what was her name? Julia Andrews was in one of the versions. And so while, production or talks were made to make this movie again in the 90s, Whitney Houston was definitely, you know, one of the people they considered to be in the movie, and, you know, she was on board with it. But by the time they actually, you know, had production up and running, she felt she was way too old to play the role, and she decided to be a fairy godmother and also produce the movie through her Brown House Productions, which also was responsible for helping produce Cheetah Girls, fun fact. But yeah, so she helped produce it. She said she's gonna be the fairy godmother, and she suggested Brandy Norwood to be Cinderella, which she was at the time, you know, an up and coming actress with, you know, the show Moesha, and she was also up and coming singer. And Brandy was really one of the girls that was like I said, holding it down for the dark skinned girls back in the 90s. And she was really an it girl. There was nowhere in the 90s you did not see Brandy, and rightfully so. She was gorgeous, she's talented. Brandy is literally called the vocal Bible for a reason, honey. And I tell you, I go up for my good sis every single time. And this movie is part of the reason. But this movie, I mean, when you look at it, talk about a star-studded cast. You had the late, great Whitney the Voice Houston, Miss Brandy Norwood, Jason Alexander, Whoopi Goldberg, Bernadette Peters, Vianne Cox, the late, great Natalie Desselle, Victor Garber, and Paolo Montalban. I mean, when I tell you, this junk was just, I said, it was just so unheard of, because this movie does what Bridgerton thought they were doing when it comes to colorblind casting. And if you're wondering what colorblind casting, or also known as non-traditional casting, it is basically the practice of casting without considering the actor's ethnicity, skin color, body shape, sex, and or gender. A representative of the Actors Equity Association has disputed the use of the term colorblind, preferring the definition non-traditional casting. Non-traditional casting is defined as the casting of ethnic minorities actors in roles where race, ethnicity, or gender is not. Okay, and Bridgerton tried to say in the sense that because it was like a fantasy type of show, and obviously historically there wouldn't be, you know, black or biracial folks being in those, like, you know, regal, you know, positions. So they were, like I said, priding itself on diversity and priding itself on doing colorblind casting. And while in some ways it did, but obviously, like I said, if you watched my video, certain portrayals, they were very strategic in how certain skin tones on the melanin side was portrayed. And it's strategic. I don't care what anyone says. People, there's nothing, at this point, it is 2021. You know what the hell you're doing when you portray certain people one way and certain people another way. Like, you... Thing. But basically, colorblind, I mean, like I said, in this cast, we had black folks, we had white folks, we have multiple black folks. That's also a very important note, because like I said, it is not enough to have just one black woman, one black dude, and that called it a day. No, because that's it's giving. When you go to a PWI and you look at the brochure and you see that one black kid looking happy as hell, but then when you go to the school, ain't no black people there, because they probably searched high and low for that one black kid to go be on their brochure. Meanwhile, they over here being racist. Yeah. That's what it's given, because most of the time you put the one token black character on the show and they barely get anything to do. Like, literally. Especially, they may get an episode or two about him, but in the grand scheme of all the other characters, they get nothing. They're just like, oh, token black friend. Or even it could be said with other minorities, token gay friend, token Asian friend, token Latina friend. Just pigeonholed. Like, okay, that's it for you. Nothing else. You get regular sassy friend with all the wisdom about, you know, dating or being cool or whatever, and that's just that on that. And that is not diversity. This movie had several, you know, black women, okay, several shades of black women. We had a black woman with box braids as the lead, shown elegantly, okay, showing the girls that yes, box braids can look good. I mean, most of the time it looks good anyway, but you know what I mean when people always talk about stuff like box braids don't look professional, like, please. And I'm so happy about that. I mean, we all know Brandy to be the box braids queen anyway. Even Whitney with her little, you know, her curly wig, I was living for it. And Whoopi had her dreads, and once again showing you that dreads can look elegant and gorgeous. And so that is one of the things I loved this movie for. And even I know there's an ongoing meme talking about, we never even realized how, or never questioned how a black woman and a white man made an Asian baby. And I was like, because when you genuinely do colorblind casting and you make these movies with heart in mind and don't rely on stereotypes and tropes, people can really sit down and enjoy a film. When you, like I said, when you have one of something, everything that rides on whatever that is, right? Like I said, most of the time, if there's only one black woman, like going back to my example with Family Guy, going back, like Loretta was the only black woman on that show, right? Therefore, all of black womanhood rode on her shoulders. So she wasn't seen as mean because she's just mean-spirited and mean, right? She was seen as mean because she's black, because we all know that the media constantly portrays black women as angry, right? They never show the reasoning for the anger. It's just this uncontrollable random rage. And so two white women there's multiple main white women on the show. So if Lois is mean, no one's sitting there thinking she's mean because she's a white woman. They're just thinking she's just mean because you have other more positive portrayals. And maybe I shouldn't even use the women in the show because misogyny. But let's say about the men, right? Like I said, okay, you had Cleveland. Cleveland was literally the only black dude on the show for a while until Jerome came along, even though Jerome is not distinguishable by any other black men that have roles on Stephen Fallon shows, The Babe with the Wall. But you had Cleveland. All of black manhood rided on Cleveland, okay? Because there was no other males that were in like a main cast spot. Whereas you had Joe, you have Peter, you have Quagmire. And while, Joe is disabled and that's a whole marginalized community within itself, each of them were white males at the end of the day, right? And so you're gonna sit there and they're all portrayed differently, as well as the other, side characters that get like a lot of camera time on the show. There are so much portrayals of white manhood. So if there's a character that's mean, like Lois's dad, right? All of white manhood does not rely on him because there's other positive portrayals of white men on the show. And so that is not the same for Cleveland because he's the only black man on the show. Everyone's gonna say, oh, he's dumb or he's this because he's black. But in this movie, where there's many portrayals of black women, when one of the stepsisters are black, no one's going to sit there and say, oh, she's a mean stepsister because she's just an angry black girl. No, because you see the fairy godmother, a black woman who's, a very, nice, caring, nurturing character, right? Then you have Brandy, optimistic, meek, patient, the object of affection of the male lead, right? And then you have Whoopi Goldberg's character, the queen, and she's also virtuous and regal and sweet and a good mother. So plenty of portrayals, positive portrayals of it. And also they had a white stepsister who was also mean. So it was like they were both equally mean. No one was sitting there thinking, oh, they're just mean because she's white or they're just mean because she's black. Both of them were equally mean. And same can be said about the stepmother. The stepmother was not, in other portrayals, it could have easily been, oh, the stepmother was racist because Brandy was black and the stepmother was white. But she had a black daughter and treated the black daughter equal to the white daughter. So it wasn't a matter of, oh, she just hates Brandy because she's black. It was because she's just mean. She was just mean to Brandy because she's just mean. Because she had a black daughter. And like I said, she treated them both the stepdaughters, regardless of their race, the same. So it almost felt like race was not a thing. And so, like I'm saying, when you portray these characters as you should and don't rely on stereotypes and, like I said, really do the work and cast a plethora of types of, minority folks, you can do that. And no one's going to sit there and be like, oh, well, how did they have an Asian baby? Is he adopted? Like, what's going on here? No one questioned it because we were too busy enjoying the show. Like, we were enjoying the movie. And so I think it is so dope when that happens. And so yeah, and I mean, like I said, this movie was amazing. I mean, and you know what else is amazing about this movie? The freaking costumes. When I tell you these costumes were just so breathtaking. 20 some years later, like that Brandy in that blue dress lives in my mind, like rent free. Like especially when I remember Lupita Nyong'o won, I think the Oscars that one year, and they had that picture of her in that blue flowy dress. That's all I thought of. I was like, oh my god, it's a real life Cinderella. Like what? But I mean, the blues, the purples, the greens, it was just so beautiful, and it complemented everyone so well. And I mean, like I said, the soundtrack slapped. I mean, obviously Whitney, Brandy, like, come on, once in a lifetime, and we are really being robbed that we still have we don't have access to that soundtrack. Oh, not yet. It is truly a travesty. But I mean, like I said, and so I guess what I'm getting at is why representation matters. Like I said, when you do these things, at the end of the day, as I said in my colorism conversation, we are taught from young that Black equals bad. I told you about the doll test study of these young kids way back, to prove about why separate but equal was a bunch of BS in Brown versus Board, and these psychologists came together to test these kids and say, which is the good doll, which is the bad doll, which is this doll, which is that doll. And what they found was that, a lot of the kids were saying, like, all the negative attributes they put to the Black doll and all the good attributes they put to the white doll, because like I said, it has been both overtly and subconsciously put in our heads that Black equals bad. And there's also other stereotypes that we have seen done to death time and time again on television, to the point where we have to, like I said, check our own biases and prejudices towards other marginalized groups. Everything is just, it plays a role into how we perceive the world, whether we like to believe it or not, fiction or not. Because people love to say, well, it's just a piece of fiction, why do you care? And it's like, because we live in a society where media plays a lot into how we perceive the world, especially in our formative years. And I have the facts to back it up, okay? Okay, so I have my research, I will reference them in my description box, but in various mediums, news, drama, and gaming, ethnic minority groups are typically marginalized and overlooked. Very often, when they are represented, they are shown in narrowly stereotyped roles such as the model Asian migrant or the exotic Latina, or depicting negatively as the problematic other, disproportionately represented as violent or criminal in less than dominant groups. Aka less intelligent, less wealthy, less powerful. Ethnic minority media, that is, media produced by and for ethnic minority groups, generally offer more positive representations and a counter-narrative to mainstream stereotypes, but can also be prone to narrow typecasting and stereotype. As I said before, there are plenty of representations in our favorite negative portrayals of Black women in shows made by Black men, or Black women also. It has, and like I said, obviously with time, a lot of people have become more self-aware and done their research and to find why portraying people is harmful, but there are still people out there making certain shows where either they're being colorist or Black women Black dark-skinned women are completely absent, which feels very purposeful. At the end of the day, what I don't understand about these movies, these television shows, these streaming services, whatever, is that when these movies are made genuinely and good, they sell, right? This movie was a major rating success, right? It aired to 60 million viewers, established itself as the most watched television musical in decades, earning ABC its highest Sunday night ratings in 10 years. And it was nominated for several industry awards, including 7 Primetime Emmy Awards, winning one for Outstanding Art Direction for a Variety or Music Program. And to even take it to modern day, the UCLA report agrees that diversity sells. It says that the median global box office has been the highest for films featuring casts that were more than 20% minority, taking nearly $450 million in 2017. And even since then, we've had big box office hits and big commercial success movies, right? With diversity, diverse casts, and minority-led casts, such as Black Panther, To All the Boys I Loved Before, Crazy Rich Asians, Always Be My Maybe, Us. Even you can talk about even Coco or Moana. Like, these movies are commercially like successful, right? At the end of the day, like I said, representation matters. When I think about this movie, I think about the little girl who didn't see herself in most movies and television shows that she saw, right? But, or at least, well, yeah, and a lot of big television shows. Like, obviously there were the 90s classics that I loved or whatever, but it was the first time that I saw a Black girl as a princess, a girl that was admired and adored, right? And a girl that was pretty and, like I said, had box braids, and she looked like someone that I could know. And to see that as a little kid did wonders for me and in really who I was as a Black girl and my self-esteem and my Blackness. And so when little girls now watch this movie, you know, because their moms probably, like I said, grew up with the movie, gonna play it or whatever, they're gonna be like, wow, I can be a princess too, and not be a princess that turns into a freaking frog. Okay? But like I said, we need those movies because white people have dozens of movies, and that is why they're able to have high self-esteem, because they're always told the sky is the limit, and they have countless examples of that. Where Black people, when we get movies, they're the struggle films, or they're the trying to teach you a lesson or teach you some point in history, or some, you know, talking about racism or something, trying to teach you something. We never get to have fantasy and fun and just have a good time for a good hour and a half to 2 hours. And this movie gave us that. It gave us bops, it gave us great costumes, it gave us great acting, and above all else, it gave us the diversity that a lot of these shows are trying to credit themselves for when they're really just trying to fit some diversity quota box, when really not giving the heart and soul that requires it to be, you know, in the show. In another article that I read about media and diversity, I read you know, an interesting fact, statistic, whatever, that basically said from the 1960s to the 2000s, most researchers drew the conclusion that by failing to reflect the diversified composition of societies and by fueling misrepresentation of minorities, mass media fed the social distance that separates different groups already distanced by de facto segregation. Okay? And like I said, it's not just fiction, it's not just the news, it's not just whatever. It is very important that minority groups are portrayed in a certain way, because if not, it reflects to the overall societal appearance. Even looking at, because what, especially beyond America, because even when you look at other countries' portrayal of what Black Americans are like, or Black people really are like, it is a lot of people's perceptions of who Black people are, especially in countries where there aren't Black people. It rides on the movies, the Western movies that they watch, where Black people are in it. So if we're constantly portrayed negatively, they're just gonna think, oh, Black people are negative and we're just stereotypes. So it's never just fiction. Like I said, whether it is subconsciously or it is overtly shown in a movie, you are sinking that into your brain, and you're like, okay, whatever. And like I said, a lot of the times when it's the only character, you're not thinking this character is mean because they are just mean. You're thinking they're mean or they're whatever negative, you know, characteristic because they are a woman or Black or whatever, you know, minority group this person belongs to, because they are the sole portrayal of whatever that is. Even with the stereotypes thing, it's not inherently wrong to have a character be a stereotype. Hear me out. Because if you're doing it with a purpose, like, because a lot of people would argue for a show like Family Guy, it's satirical, it's being dark humor, it's being funny, or it's trying to poke fun at those stereotypes. However, like I said, it is way more harmful to portray a Black character a certain way compared to a white character. There's way more writing on that. But it's one thing to do that, but the other thing is to, you know, invert a stereotype. Like, it can be, a character can appear one way on the surface, but, you know, as we see them grow, especially if it's a television show, we see them move and go forward, and we learn more about the character. We see them fully fleshed out, and we see why they are the way they are. Like I said, it is one thing to portray a character to just be an angry Black woman, but if we get to the deep reasoning as to why this character is angry, then we can really have the conversation. You can really, or spark a conversation and a dialogue as to why that is the way it is. I feel like a good example of this is if you watch Stranger Things. While they definitely need to do better in the diversity department, one of the things I really did appreciate in the season that came out like 2 years ago was the introduction, or the bigger, I guess, role that Erica played that season. And if Erica is what is his name in the show? Lucas, I think his name was. Lucas' little sister. For the first 2 seasons, she just seemed like the sassy little sister that we've seen time and time again, especially when it comes to little Black girls. But in season 3, we saw Erica play a major role, right? And you saw that she was a little nerd herself. She was really good at math. You know, she's taking down Russian spies. She's a very smart, intelligent girl. And I felt like that was a good, you know, way of showing a character to be one way, but as we got to know the character more, we learned that they were much more than the stereotype. There was more to this character than meets the eye. And I think that Stranger Things does that in general, a lot of their characters, but I love that they did that for Erica specifically. So that's what you do, right? You can't just, it's not just one thing to show a character in a stereotype way in the name of satire, when you're really not even doing what you're supposed to do. And like I said, when you only have one, all of Blackness, or whatever, you know, minority group this character belongs to, rides on this character, and people can't sit there and enjoy the character because they're gonna be like, oh, especially for me, it's like, oh, this is just colorism, or oh, this is just misogynoir. But yeah, that is just my whole thing about why representation matters. Like I said, people, Black kids, Asian kids, Latina kids, need to see themselves on screen. It does wonders for them. It does wonders for their racial development and their understanding. And like I said, even white people, it helps them show that there are more to Black people than just trauma and negativity. Okay? And so that is my point. Okay? It's not just fiction at the end of the day. That is so much deeper than that. And when these things are done, they're done well. And there are countless examples of this happening. And I just wish that in 2021, that these movie companies and these television shows do better, because I don't understand how the fact that this is like this movie was made 24 years ago and there's nothing that's been like it since. And it's truly a shame, because it is truly amazing. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you guys remember the 1997 version of Cinderella. What is your favorite moments, your favorite parts? Who's your favorite characters? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll definitely see you guys in my next video. Peace out, y'all.